Welcome back for the fourth section of the Salesforce Admin Certification Exam, Service and Support Applications. This is going to take up 11% of the exam. Let's go ahead and dive into the bullets that are found on the actual exam guide and talk through how you can be very prepared for this section of the test. So the first bullet is describe the capabilities of case management. So we want to start off by talking about what are cases in Salesforce, how this standard object is often used, and then we want to talk about the beginnings of different ways you can customize cases. Not only talking about, as you can across all objects, of page layouts, record types, etc., but particularly talking about case assignment rules and how queues can be used to help your service or support team utilize cases and make sure that they are servicing and responding to your clients appropriately. So the case object is a standard object used in Salesforce to really represent an inquiry, a question, or even can be part of a ticketing system for your clients. What's important to note are the different ways that cases can be created, and something you need to be familiar with. For example, you can manually create a case from standard Salesforce functionality under the case object. They're often under related lists under the account or contact or other places. But particularly with Salesforce there's something called the email to case. And so I want to jump into a developer org and talk about that as we talk about the structure of cases. And then once cases are created, we'll talk about assignments and queues that we can use. So I want to jump into this developer org here, and I'm going to go into the setup here. And again, I want to talk about how cases can be created. So if I go in here, and I'm going to go ahead and just type in case here, and we're going to see all of these different settings under the service side. And so what I really want to talk about to start is these different cases. I have a web to case, I have an email to case, and I have a web to case HTML generator. These are things that you'll need to be familiar with of how cases can enter your system. So outside of just manually creating a case, which I want to just show you what that looks like, is here I'm under the cases tab here. If I hit new, you'll see these standard fields for the most part pop up, right? You're able to attach a case to a contact, as well as an account, as well as put in just different information. You know, the status, priority, where the case came from, whether it's phone, email, web, etc. And then you could always go and put in your different custom fields, etc. But really the case is, again, that inquiry, that question, that issue or problem that can get created in Salesforce to attach to an account or to a contact. And so if you think of the sales org using leads and opportunities, you have the service team that uses cases. And so again, case is you want to understand in your system what different priority is, what the status is, you know, is it being worked, is it not being worked, is it closed? As well as something that's very common is the subject and description. Particularly if you bring an email to case, you'll have the subject of an email as well as that description. And so I want to show what the cases look like, but jumping back to the email to case is what we'll use first, is oftentimes on a support team, you will have a general support email that can be shared across your team. Oftentimes you'll see it as on websites such as contact@companyname.com or support@companyname.com. And so this is where you can make sure that you understand how to set up this email to case so that anytime someone were to email, whether it's directly sending an email to your support domain or it's going through a form, is making sure that that is going to be built as a case within Salesforce with any applicable attachments. So if I go into here and I go ahead and hit edit here, I'm going to hit enable email to case, right? And so this way I want to enable this here. And so as I hit save here, I now have the email to case enabled. So now that I have this enabled, I can set up which emails are going to be able to create these cases. So if I were just a client of yours, I could email, in this example, I'm going to go ahead and hit new for that routing address. And you know, I can just put this as, you know, whether it is a ticketing system or maybe it's a product team. In this case, I'll put product team, and this will probably be product@companyname.com. You know, very common there. And so in this way, I can have an actual email that a client can go to and email directly, and it will then create a case within Salesforce. And so this is the email to case. This is something that will show up on the exam, and just understanding the different ways. You know, this is the only one that I really wanted to walk through, but be familiar with understanding that you can also do it a web to case. Web to case HTML generator, I didn't have it on the test, but it may be coming up. But just know these 3 different ways that it can be created. A lot of times this email is something that is more common of how cases can be created within your system automatically. And so that is how cases interact with Salesforce. They can be created from email, from web, be manually created. And again, they are that potential ticketing system or inquiry system that your team can then field from a service or support standpoint. So now that we have cases in the system, let's talk about how we can attach queues and have assignment rules to assign these cases to the appropriate individuals. So this is very similar to in the last video talking about lead assignment rules and setting those up. It's going to be a very similar infrastructure here in Salesforce. But before I do that, I did want to say that as I go into the developer org here, and if I type in queues here, queues are really important on the service side, because you can set up a queue that your entire service team can go in and see what has been coming in, and whether you want the team to manually go in and grab those themselves, or if you just want the queue to be used to then trigger, which we'll talk later, different escalation rules, etc. But just to set up a queue here, this is something important for this service team, is I'm going to just go ahead and put this, again, I'll use this product service team. And so that is going to be the team. I could set it up with a queue email. I could use that same product email if I'd like. But what's important here is that for all queues, you have to select the supported object. So a queue is directly tied to an object. So in this case, we want to set up with a case. So this queue is only going to be able to put cases into the queue. And so here I can also add different queue members who are members of this, to be able to have that sharing model, be able to pull and transfer those records of cases. But here I just want to set up that queue. So I'm going to hit save here. And now I have that product service team on the case. And so here's a queue, and now I want to use this queue for this case team in the assignment rules. So here under the case assignment rules, this is going to be set up very similar to how we talked about in the last video about the sales and marketing, how we can set up case assignment rules. Same rules apply in the fact that you can only have one active at a time. We see a standard one here, but I want to create a new one here. And so here I'll just call this the service, I'll call this case assignment. And I'm going to go ahead and activate this. And here is where I can assign incoming cases. So whether it is important that I have a phone team or a web team, here's where I could enforce that, right? So as cases are created, they're set into here. So for example, we'll create a rule. We'll say that the case origin, it has to equal, we'll say in this case, popped up on the other screen here, we'll say that it has to come through phone, right? So we'll say, oh, came through phone, so I actually want to send it to a particular phone user, right? Which in this case I'll put as myself. And I can have that template email, et cetera, right? I can have rules for each type of criteria for an incoming case. So in this case, I have phone going to Ryan Hyatt. Let's say that maybe I want the product team to go to a product queue, right? So in that case, I'll put that as rule 2. In this case, let's go ahead and say case reason. And we'll say case reason. In this case, we'll say equipment complexity, right? Which is somewhat related to product. Now in this case, I want to go ahead and assign it to that queue, right? And so this is how I can use queues in the assignment and make sure that it's assigned appropriately. The added benefit of using these assignment rules, as you see here, is you can also define case teams to add to the case. So you could have an entire team assigned to certain cases. So I'm going to hit save here. And here we have the case assignment rules. So again, this is on case creation, is what's going to trigger the case assignment rules. So right now, if I were to have a case equal phone, it's going to go to Ryan. If it doesn't equal phone and it happens to have equipment complexity, it's going to go to the product service team. So let me go ahead and let me run through this equipment complexity here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh this page, and let's just show how it goes into that queue on the case assignment rules. So I'm going to hit new here. I'm going to hit case origin, make sure it's not phone. So in this case, I'll put email, and I'm going to have the reason here, make sure that it is going to be the equipment complexity. And make sure it's assigning using active assignment rules. And so here I have that case that I created with the equipment complexity. And we see here that it is now sent to the product service team. So I was able to create that queue, which then was be able to put into the case assignment rules. And so that's a very high overview of what cases are, the case queues, as well as the assignment rules. Again, very similar to the sales and marketing piece is having queues available and having assignment rules on creation. And this is very helpful to make sure that these tickets are coming in and are being sorted and sent to the proper individuals as soon as possible. Make sure that your response times are very quick so that you can continue to service your clients of any issue, any problem, any question. And so that's really the general capabilities of the case object and how the service and support teams use them daily. Real quick, if this has been helpful, please give me a like and subscribe. I'll continue to not only work on this set of videos for the admin exam, but continue to put out content, make sure that we're staying on top and that we're leveling up as Salesforce professionals. Now let's get back to it. Second bullet point is, given a scenario, demonstrate how to automate case management. And so in this piece, we want to talk a little more about support processes, different escalation rules, auto response rules, and get a little more deeper into how Salesforce out of the box can automate a lot of this. You know, we just went over what cases are, how you can assign them and put them in queues. We want to go a little more in depth on, because case is a very special object, because it's that ticketing system, Salesforce has built in these native functionality to help your team respond, to make sure that they are being responded to quickly, that they're being escalated and closed out appropriately. So first up, I want to talk about support processes. Just as we went through in the last video in the sales and marketing about the different opportunity process, you can also set up different case processes to be assigned to different case record types. And so this is very important because your cases can be very different across a team. You could have cases that are simply, you know, product failures. You can have cases that are just questions that someone has. Maybe they're confused, as well as you could have different onboarding cases or different inquiries. And so there's could be a very wide range of cases. Cases is all encompassing of that ticketing system that your team has in place. And so that means that there can be different case processes. So I'm going to jump in and just show you what that looks like, how to set those up. Again, under the marketing tab, you have the lead processes, you have the sales processes, and then under service, we now have the support processes. And so here is where I can create a new support process. I can add in the different statuses that maybe I want. So in this one, again, I'm going to call it the product support process. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And this is going to be able to have that same process for the product team. They're going to know, hey, what are the values that I want to have in here? And so simple right now, it's new, working, escalated, and closed. You know, I can hit save, as well as on the case itself, I can go ahead and also add a few values as well. And so that's what I'd like to do now, is just to show you how you can edit that process. Is I'm going to go in the Object Manager under Case, and go ahead and add a few values to that status. And so here we are. Those are those same that we saw here. I'd like to add just a few values here just to show how this works on the process. So I'm going to add in here, we will say, product team help. We will say, maybe it's awaiting response from the client, or maybe we need to respond. So team response time, etc. So these are just different things that you can add. I want to add them to the support process here, because a lot of times, as a service team, you have those SLAs, those service level agreements that you want to be able to understand, okay, what's being worked, what's being escalated, what needs another team involved, and what currently has another team involved, or maybe we're waiting for the client. For example, oftentimes you may have an inquiry come in, you send an email response, and now you're just waiting for the client to respond back. And so you may want to have a good queue of those to every few days go ahead and reach out and say, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Can we close this out? Do you still need help, etc.? And so now that's actually added to our support process. So if I go back into support process, here's that product support process. And here are all these values here, the ones that I just added. And so again, support processes are important. Processes can be added to several record types. So if you have a completely different case type, whether it is that question, which could be very simple, just helping them find articles, helping them find resources, or it is a product issue, a product defect, a complaint, you may have different ways of following up. And so you can create those different record types, which from there you can assign page layouts, assign a different support process, as we all know. Moving on from processes, I want to talk about a fun one here, which is an auto response rule that we can have. And this is, as you may have experienced yourself, as maybe you go to a website and you ask a question, you may receive an immediate email saying, thank you, we have received your inquiry, we have received your question, we'll be reaching out shortly. Here are a few articles that may be able to help you in the meantime. So that's something that Salesforce can help trigger for you, to have an auto response for someone who has sent in a case request. And so we're going to find that here under that same service tab. I'm going to type in auto response here, and here we have the case auto response rules. Again, you see it's mirroring a lot of what leads can do for the sales team. It's what cases need to be done for the service team. So I'm going to go ahead and click into here, and I want to go ahead and add and set up a rule. So we'll call this again, we'll say this product service team, and we're going to activate this. And so from here we can have, again, those rules in place to send an auto response email. So I'm going to hit a new rule entry, and this is going to, just like that assignment, we can have potentially different email templates for different cases that are incoming. So in this case, we'll say that the case origin, for example, was a phone call. So maybe we have just a slightly different template saying, oh, thank you for chatting with me on the phone. We look forward to reaching out here shortly. So I can go ahead and have that here. Again, typically you can have the product support. And what is important is that in order to have a sender, you do need to have it approved as an org-wide email address. And so that way when the client, whoever submitted the case, receives this email, that's who it's coming from. And so you'll see here that you need to make sure that you do have that set up in order to set up this auto response rule. And so again, what we're saying here is that if this case came in from a phone call, which likely is going to be a manual creation, we'll set it up so where this is an email, which I think is a little more practical here. So we'll say that this came in from an email, and so we have a different email template that we may want to attach, right? That is, thank you for emailing. We will go ahead and set up time with you and send out some resources according to what your email says. And so this is where, again, just like the assignment rules on the cases, you can have different rules, different criteria or order in which these go off. And in my mind, the big piece of this is that you can have different email addresses from your team being sent out to clients and different templates. So it feels a little more customized. And this is really the importance of making sure that you get these auto response rules. These auto response rules can be set up with any number of rule entries to make sure that you are trying to help these clients feel heard, feel seen. And so this is going to be your auto response rules. Highly recommend, I'm going to link 2 different trail mixes in different modules. Highly recommend that you go through the case and service trail mix in Salesforce. It helps you walk through start to finish of a great example with different support processes, record types, and auto response rules with different templates. And really helps you understand how to piece these together and make sure that the client is getting that reassurance that they have been heard immediately and that a team is now working on their ticket, working on their question, their inquiry, or even problem. Last piece I want to talk about are case escalation rules. What case escalation rules allow you to do is have several different rule sets in place that monitor your cases and take appropriate action to escalate those. And obviously this may have happened to you where you send in a ticket on a particular company or a product, and maybe you're working with a certain support agent, whether it's through a chat bot or through a phone or email, but they inform you that this isn't a part of their team, or they need a tech support level 2 to help you. They're essentially escalating this case or sending it off to someone else. And so Salesforce allows you to build in different case escalation rules, which allow you to do 2 things, and this is important. It allows you to either upgrade this case and send it off or assign a different user or owner of the case, as well as send off emails to case owners or maybe team leads. So I want to jump in and show you what this looks like. So I'm under here, I'm going to go under the escalation rules, and you'll notice that there's 2 places here. We have the escalation rules, which I'm going to set up, and then you have case escalations, to where you can actually see maybe what cases have triggered escalations or could potentially trigger escalations to monitor very well. So under the case escalation rules, this is very similar to how you can set up lead assignment, case assignment rules. You can set this up to have multiple different rules that then trigger off different actions. So I'm just going to click into the standard rule that I have here, and you'll see, just like the case assignment we set up, you can have multiple rules or rule entries and have essentially an order or a hierarchy on which ones are most important. So if you see on my screen here, really what I'm looking at is these platinum SLAs are top of the order, right? Then I have gold, and then silver, bronze, etc. And so what's really important is that each rule can have a different action. So if I were to click into this top rule, which is a platinum SLA or service level agreement, meaning this is extremely important, we need to get to this ASAP. If you see here, as I click into the rule, you're able to set up escalation actions, which, as I mentioned, meaning you can either update assignment of the case and send off notifications. So let me create just a brand new one here. And what I can do here is I can set up the time. If the case is still open, I can set up a time limit for this action to happen. Again, that action can be updating the ownership or updating or sending an email. And so again, this is only for open cases. If it's a closed case, awesome, your team did their job, no need to hassle your team, it's already closed out. And so you can do it by different increments here. In this case, I will do 3 hours and 30 minutes, right? And so what I can do here is I can choose whether I want to reassign this or send off an email. Likely I want maybe a case owner, and maybe I want, the executive team, right, at testcompany.com, right? So I want my executive team to know, hey, we have a very important case, a very important client. Maybe they want to reach out personally after 3 hours and 30 minutes and give them a personal touch, right? We can also send out the different notification. We can set up a template to send off as well to the case owner, additional email, or even specific users. Could be a team lead, could be the support manager, etc. And so again, these are important for the action. You can either reassign it or you can send off an email. And you can reassign it back into a queue or send to a user. And again, notify, send out this emails as well. So if I hit save here, we'll now see, oh, apologies, need to set up a template here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in, I'll just put the sample here. And so you'll see here that now I have two different rules, right? So after 2 hours, it's gonna get reassigned to someone and they're gonna get sent an email. After 3.5 hours, you know, we want to actually send it off to the case owner as well as the executive team so that they might need to reach out personally because this is a platinum SLA agreement. And so that's just that first escalation rule, right? As I mentioned, each entry, every rule entry can have a different action. So that was just that first one. If I go down the list, maybe down here to maybe a lower tier of a case, you know, this one is set up for 6 hours, right? It's not super high priority. If I don't close it within 6 hours, then there'll be some action taken. And so case escalation allows your team to stay on top of high priority cases and make sure that you have any update of ownership as well as important email notifications internally get sent off to make sure that they are working important cases and that they are closing them out appropriately. That wraps up this section of the support and service applications here. Really, the big piece is understanding cases. Understand these out-of-the-box functionality and automations that Salesforce has, how cases can get created, assigned, escalated, responded to, and really at the end of the day, understand how you can customize using these out-of-the-box tools as well as using flows, using different functionality to help your support team utilize Salesforce. Salesforce is often seen as kind of that sales, that marketing tool to get new business, but so important is how you service that business once you have an agreement in place, right? We want to make sure that providing the best service, answering the best questions, any problems you want to address, and that's what case is that standard object that Salesforce has in place to have your team continue to service and support your clients. I'll link a few different trailheads and make sure that you are walking through these trail mixes. You go through it in a developer org. Do this yourself. Go through all of these steps and you'll do great on this part of the exam. Thanks, and I'll catch you on the next one.